Hello and welcome to... Fuck, I already forgot the name. I'm just going to keep recording. Just going to keep going. Fuck it. Whew. All right. Hello and welcome to Ish and Chips, the podcast where Ishmael the adventurer and ChipHand Z talk about a whole fucking slew of things, but primarily, sequels, spiritual successors to cool things in media and pop culture that we like. And this week, what are we talking about, Ishmael?
We are talking about Elden Ring. The trailer for it just dropped at E3, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah. So I think it's safe to say that, Elden Ring's been something we've both been looking forward to for a little while.
Since it was announced, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I want to say it was first announced. The first trailer came out in 2019, summer 2019. And I think a lot of people were expecting to get some more news on it sooner. I think this might be the longest we've had to wait for more information about a FromSoft game. So basically the fan base was pretty much kind of going stir crazy. Because it's been since 2019 since we've really had a FromSoft game. That's when I think Sekiro came out in March 2019.
I think that's been a lot of games, because I'd assume because of COVID, where we got a lot of information on things in 2019, and then we haven't heard back until now. Just like Starfield and a couple of other games that were announced in 2019 but never given any more information about.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was definitely a dearth of just general information coming from a lot of studios, and COVID-19 is definitely, I think, a big reason for that. From what I've read and heard, Elden Ring was actually probably supposed to come out this year, but because of COVID and the fact that a lot of the people at FromSoft had to work remotely, it kind of it slowed down the process of putting the finishing touches on this game that at this point is scheduled to come out January 21st, 2022, which is sooner than I expected to get it. That's
sooner
for sure.
I expected to get it as well.
Yeah, but
anyway, why don't we get into what actually is it?
Yeah, so what is Elden Ring is a great question. We kind of skipped over that. We just assumed that people listening to this podcast would more or less know. But for those of you who don't, Elden Ring is a new game by From Software, the creators of Dark Souls, Sekiro, previous Game of the Year winner, and Bloodborne, as well as many other games. Extremely popular developer, one that I think we both have a lot of appreciation and affection for. Dark Souls 1 is one of my favorite games. Bloodborne is also a favorite game of mine. I think it's safe to say that this is something we've certainly both been looking forward to. But Elden Ring is kind of interesting in a way. Do you want to talk about kind of some of the reasons, maybe specifically that kind of made Elden Ring sort of an interesting a differentiation or kind of continuation of sort of the Dark Souls formula, I guess?
Yeah, so FromSoft for the last couple of years has been sticking to the same formula. They had games before then. I'm pretty unaware of them. I know Kingsfield, but the last couple of years with their last couple of games, it's been kind of the same idea, this sort of stamina-based combat system, deep lore with a lot of hidden related things, and it looks like this is going to have the same sort of formula where you have this sort of stamina-based combat, a lot of deep lore that's probably going to be hidden for those who want to search for it. In the trailer, there are elements that you can see that are clearly taken from other games, things like weapon arts from Dark Souls 3 and I believe Dark Souls 2. Big boss fights, things of that nature. I know they're talking about stealth, which is going to be taken from Sekiro, which is interesting, but we can get more into that later. But yeah, it seems like they're following the same formula. It seems like this is going to continue with it, which is, if it works, why change it? That's my mentality on this.
Well, I mean, what I really, I guess, want to know is that I think a big part of the reason why people were excited for Elden Ring specifically, as opposed to, not to say people weren't excited for Sekiro or Dark Souls 3, or their last few games, or Deracine, which is apparently a game no one knew came out, but it came out, I want to say, 2018. Deracine, they did one of their more recent games by From Software was a PSVR game called Deracine. It was kind of like a mystery, first-person, mystery game. Takes place in kind of like a bleak setting.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, most people don't. But so I haven't played it or anything. But so essentially, as far as I can tell, a big part of the reason there's been so much hype around Elden Ring is because, one, it's like FromSoft's first kind of foray into an actual open world. They've done, obviously Kingsfield was, I think, maybe their last attempt at kind of an open world game, but I think, Kingsfield is pretty dated. Not to say it's a bad game. I haven't played it, or I haven't played the Kingsfield series, but I think that was the last time they tried a true open world. Dark Souls 1, I think, and Dark Souls 2, I think, are kind of considered more open, but they're really, mainly because you can kind of do things out of order, but generally speaking, I don't think most people would look at those games and think they're open world.
There's a huge difference of open world between Dark Souls and, say, Skyrim. Exactly.
So part of the reason Elden Ring has been so sought, something people have been oh man, this is really exciting, is it's a lot of things from the Dark Souls series that people really like, but put in a completely new setting that is, from everything that's been reported, going to be an open world game. So that's really neat. But another reason why people have been super excited for it is it's a collaboration between From Software, the creators of Dark Souls, and George R.R. Martin, the writer of Song and Ice and Fire, aka Game of Thrones. So pretty big collaboration, interesting collaboration, because it's I don't think anyone saw that coming.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere. When I first heard about it, I was I thought it was a joke. It sounds like one of those things that's that people just make up. You go to the Reddit for Dark Souls, and people are just oh, new Dark Souls game, and it's but it's not really. That's kind of how I felt about it, where they were oh, George R.R. Martin's working on the next game. It's no, he's not. That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean? Yeah. And then it turned out to be true, and I was oh, okay.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, do you have any particular feelings about George R.R. Martin's involvement? Have you read the Song of Ice and Fire books? Have you watched Game of Thrones at all? Does George R.R. Martin being part of the writing team for this game, does that make you more excited for the game? How does that make you feel about the potential of Elden Ring?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. I always felt FromSoft's worlds, I guess, as far as Dark Souls goes, because I feel there's not, Dark Souls has 3 games on it, but Sekiro and Bloodborne only have 1, so there's less lore there. Mm-hmm. But I always felt with Dark Souls, their world building was pretty decent already, so I don't really know how much including George R. R. Martin is going to improve it. It's interesting to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've never read Game of Thrones or anything like that. I've never watched the shows. I've been told I should, and I probably should at some point, but I never have.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm curious if I'm even going to be able to pick up on his influence. If I'm going to be able to see some story points and be oh, that is unlike FromSoft. That's probably George R. R. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how to feel about it. I don't feel bad about it because I know he's obviously a good writer. He's got the millions of copies sold to prove it. So
yeah, I think at very least, because I'm not someone who, I've seen maybe a couple episodes of Game of Thrones, and I have the first audiobook for the first Song of Ice and Fire book, which I'm pretty sure is just called Game of Thrones. But I haven't listened to it yet. So I'm totally a George R. R. Martin virgin. I'm not super like I don't have a lot of like experience with his work, but from just the fact that they got him on board and we'll talk more about like what he did, like what his involvement in the game was a little bit later, but just the fact that they got him on board and that it is like a stated collaboration between FromSoft and George R. R. Martin, it like that already like gives me a lot of hope that this game will be really, really like good, and like it, like in the sense that like I would have played this game regardless if he was involved or not, but the fact that they got him on board as like a writer, I think kind of shows their dedication to like how cool and like deep they want this game to be. And as we'll get into talking about it, it seems like this game is going to be both mechanically deeper than any game they've ever done, and also, or at very least any game they've done, you know, in the past like 10, 15 years. Since they started like the Soul series, but also it's looking like it's going to be like story-wise and like lore-wise and like mythos-wise way deeper than anything they've done as well. So like that gets me really excited. Yeah.
One thing, less about this game, but more about games as a whole, is I feel like games have been evolving into, like, obviously they're a mainstream form of media now, but I feel like they've been evolving into even more of a mainstream form of media over the last couple of years. Because there always used to be this stigma about games, how like, oh well, games aren't movies or games aren't TV shows. But now, in the modern age, you have big name actors who are signing on to video games for AAA titles, and now we have George R. R. Martin, a famous book author who is working on a video game. Like that's, I don't know. For me, it kind of holds the future of games, and it's kind of interesting how like you get to see these collaborations, and in the future we might get more.
Yeah.
Well, in the future we'll definitely get more. So like you might have like, you know, the blockbuster of movies. You might eventually have you might get a game where the entire voice acting cast is like A-list celebrities, and then you have a writer who's, you know, well known for their stuff in movies and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see how more and more, I guess, professions are coming into the fold of video games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I mean, it's a little funny sometimes to see like literally Norman Reedus or like literally the guy from John Wick. Everyone's gonna hate me for forgetting his name.
Reeves.
Yeah, Keanu. It's funny to see like literally those like real people in a video game. Like it's kind of like a bit of a meme. It's a bit of a joke, I would say. Like, not that it's a bad thing. And it's like those, you know, I'm sure those. I haven't played either of those games, Cyberpunk or Death Stranding, but I've heard that, you know, their performances were pretty good. In both games, but I just it's a little funny because it's like seeing like if George R. R. Martin, like if he had a character who looked just like him in Elden Ring, I think that'd be like kind of hilarious and stupid. But like,
yeah,
I think what's cooler is seeing like big names in like writing or directing kind of getting involved in video games in a different way, because obviously, you and I know this, like video games are kind of a special medium in that, and not just necessarily video games, but like games in general. They're a special medium in comparison to like TV, movies, or books in that they're interactive, you know, and I think a game that, like, when, you know, that stigma behind games that you were mentioning when you were talking about how a lot of kind of like as games have become more and more mainstream, there used to be like kind of a sect of individuals who were like, oh, games have to really like step up their storytelling, man. Like, and I really think they have a lot in the past like 20 years or so. But I think what's great is when, and FromSoft are like the kings of this in a way, and is that a game needs to both be like engaging to, you know, like a really good game for me is a game that's like engaging to your hands. It's fun to play. But it also like gives you like an experience that only a game can give you. So that like, that's like environmental storytelling. That's like making you like essentially the best games in my opinion are the games that like you get more of the story by literally interacting with the world. It's not all done in cutscenes. And I think FromSoft does that really well. Like that, you know, part of the fun of their games is like exploring the world, learning more about the world, because the world is like a character in their games. And the state of the world and the things that you find in it and the environmental storytelling kind of inform the characters of, well, the character of the characters involved. Kind of a funny way to put it, but I think FromSoft does that really well, and with George R.R. Martin's writing on board, I think they can do that potentially better than they ever have. So I'm really excited to see what they cook up.
So less about the game as a whole, focusing on the trailer now. What were your first impressions of the trailer?
First impressions of the trailer and just kind of like everything we've been getting and like, you know, because obviously on their website they have like, you know, dozens of images and stuff like that. I'll be honest, my first impression of the trailer, I watched it with a group of friends and I muted them because we were on Discord. I muted them when I watched it because I was like, I don't want any of you idiots talking in my ear while I'm listening to this trailer because I don't want your influence on me. So I'll be honest, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, this looks a lot like Dark Souls, a lot more like Dark Souls than I thought it would. And I'll say that I was a little bit underwhelmed upon first viewing. However, I watched it like 300 times after that, like kind of like pausing and looking at like the details of what's happening. And the more I watched it, the more I got really excited for it. But what about you? What were your first impressions?
So, yeah, I agree. I didn't watch it as much as you did. I probably only watched it a handful of times, like less than 5 times. But
oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've watched it so many times, dude.
I agree that it very much looks like Dark Souls. My first impression of it when I watched it was that if we were to look at Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro as 3 different types of games, even though they're all very similar, but 3 different types of games with 3 different types of styles. Mm-hmm. I felt like this was closest to Dark Souls, which I'm personally happy with. I like Sekiro. I played a bit of Bloodborne. I like Bloodborne, but I don't know, something about the classic Dark Souls style combat. It just, for me, it's, you know, sword and shield. I love that sort of experience, so I'm all about it. The trailer, it was very quick, so it was hard for me to really tell a lot of what was going on. It's funny how they called it a gameplay trailer, but like I really felt like I wasn't getting an idea of like how the gameplay is actually going to go.
Yeah.
As far as like the nitty-gritty of it, but
yeah, and that's definitely going to be what makes the difference in the end. Like if it feels bad to play, obviously it's like, well, that would be a bummer. I doubt it will. Like FromSoft, I think even in something like Sekiro, where I really like Sekiro, but it's definitely like one of my, out of like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, like out of their other recent games, I'd probably say it's like I like Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne significantly more than I like Sekiro. I probably like Sekiro more than like Dark Souls 3 or Dark Souls 2 though. Just because I think From does their best work when they're working in like an original world, like a fresh world. I think they have the most creative liberty, I think, is when they do their best work. But what I'll say is that like, yeah, I'm really excited because like as much as I think Sekiro is like a really competent product and like a really good game, I will say that like I was far less interested in like the setting of Sekiro. Yeah. And like Sekiro, I think has a lot of like awesome elements of like when you're in the world, like a gives you a lot of like, you know, the prosthetic tools and like the ninja arts give you a lot of creativity in how you can take out like regular enemies. But when you get into boss fights, a lot of times like, yeah, there'll be like one prosthetic that's effective or like against like a particular boss or like, but most of the time, especially in boss fights, it's really just like, all right, time to block and riposte, like time to, you know, just like learn their patterns. And like, I think what I missed from Dark Souls and Bloodborne to some degree is that like I felt like there were more like effective, you could find like more effective ways, and like if you're having trouble with a boss, you can like, oh, I'm gonna switch over to using like a different, like maybe some more ranged options or like some magic or like or you know, you can summon a phantom or you can summon another player to help. Like I liked that it gave you options, and I feel like Sekiro had like less options in some of those ways. But for me, the biggest thing about about Elden Ring and why I'm excited to return to like a fantasy setting, like a Western fantasy setting, is that like it's just like I think FromSoft are on their on their most creative, like best foot when they are like because they're a Japanese studio, but they do these like really cool fantasy settings that are kind of like not like a typical fantasy setting. Like, yes, they look the same at first blush, but like they're always like very vertical and like have like weird shit going on in them. Like they kind of interpret like sort of fantasy settings in like a weird way, and that's kind of like what I love about FromSoft in a way. Like, is that they'll take like something that like, oh, like just an ogre that would show up in like a normal like, you know, fantasy RPG like Dragon's Dogma. It's not just going to be an ogre in a FromSoft game. It's going to be like a weird fucking thing with like 80 arms, or like, you know, or has like a gaping hole in its chest that'll like, it'll swallow you through the hole in its chest or something. Like it's going to be weird. It's going to be like kind of like horror-esque in a way, and I think they do a really good job with like kind of making fantasy settings their own as opposed to it being like boilerplate fantasy.
Well, see,
yeah.
FromSoft introduced me to a genre that I didn't even know existed until actually years after playing Dark Souls. I read something and I was like, wow, yeah. Post-apocalyptic fantasy.
Ooh, music
which
to
is
my
something
ears.
that I didn't realize really even existed until like I saw the name and I looked back at Dark Souls and I said, yeah, you have a world that's decaying, that's decrepit, but it's a fantasy setting. I'm so used to the Fallouts, you know, the like, you know, Terminators, Mad Max, where it's like, you know, oh yeah, the world's dead, it's post-apocalypse, but it's modern post-apocalypse or futuristic post-apocalypse. Whereas Dark Souls is a fantasy post-apocalypse, and I think that's so cool.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's awesome, and like I love that. Yeah, and that's part of what I like about their games is like you're kind of like, unlike not to say these games don't do their own settings really well, but like kind of like in Skyrim or like Dragon's Dogma or like the Witcher games, it's like those worlds are much more like populated. And like feel like, oh yeah, people live here. Like this is a civilization. It might be a civilization on decline, or a threat of decline is maybe impending. But I like that in Dark Souls games, you're kind of a lot of times you're visiting a kingdom or a country. In Elden Ring's case, basically a whole country, a whole ass country. Like after their rise and fall, or like maybe like as they're on their way out, like as like the climate, like as like their apocalypse is happening. Like in Sekiro, there was like you're kind of there for the downfall of the kingdom, and in Bloodborne, you're kind of there sort of like at the tail end of like a bunch of bad shit. You're kind of getting there as like things are reaching their crescendo in a way, and it's neat. It's because it allows you to kind of get a lot from exploring the world. You're like, oh, this used to be this, but now it's all fucked up, and like, how did that happen? And it's an interesting, like, it encourages you to be like a investigator or like a archaeologist almost. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
But let's talk about some of the pieces of the trailer.
I actually want to hit on the story first. I want to just kind of like go over the synopsis. So on the Bandai Namco website, there is kind of like actually quite a bit of information there, in terms of just like what the general like plot, or like what the setup is of this world that we're going to be exploring. So I'm just going to go ahead and read through that. So the Golden Order has been broken. Rise tarnished, and be guided by grace to brandish the power of the Elden Ring and become an Elden Lord in the lands between. In the lands between, ruled by Queen Marika the Eternal, the Elden Ring, the source of the Erd Tree, has been shattered. Marika's offspring, demigods all, claimed the shards of the Elden Ring, known as the Great Runes, and the mad taint of their newfound strength triggered a war, the Shattering. A war that meant abandonment by the greater will. And now, the guidance of grace will be brought to the tarnished, who were spurned by the grace of gold and exiled from the lands between. Ye dead who yet live, your grace long last. Follow the path to the lands between, beyond the foggy sea to stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
They really like to say lands between.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting blurb on the website. Kind of gives us like basically sort of like what you'd get during like the opening cutscene, maybe. Like kind of like, hey, here's the overall like here's like what triggers the plot, right?
They're gonna get that same voice actress from Dark Souls 1 and 3 to come in. Rise, tarnished, and be guided by grace to brandish. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Well,
it seems like in Dark Souls 1, we were undead. In Dark Souls 3, we were ashen, and now we're tarnished.
Yes, so
it seems like our title.
We play as a tarnished. We're not the tarnished. There are other. So, according to some information from some interviews with Miyazaki, we are actually one of many tarnished who were exiled from the lands between because we lost the grace of gold. So, and this apparently happened, this grace that we lost apparently happened before this war called the Shattering. So the ancestors of the tarnished basically were exiled. The Elden Ring was shattered by someone or something. That's what led to the Golden Order being broken and this big war where basically all of these offspring of Queen Marika, who's apparently an important figure, basically got these things called the Great Runes, which were like the shards of the Elden Ring, and they used that to become freaks and super powerful or whatever, and there was a big war. And now we're on our way back. We're being called back by new grace once lost. And we're gonna fight and become a cool Elden Lord man. It's gonna be fucking sick. Well, yeah. I don't know. What do you think of like the general like plot? Yeah, it sounds very Dark Souls. It's like a very Dark Souls plot. Yeah.
It's cryptic like the other Darks, like the other FromSoft games. There's obviously a lot of subtext that we won't know until we start reading some item descriptions in the game.
Oh, for sure.
So, I mean, as a base story, it's fine. It's nothing special, to be honest. But again, FromSoft really shines when you, like you said before, being an investigator. Once you start being an investigator, that's where their stories start to shine.
Yeah.
It's never in like these opening cutscenes where like you really, get a lot of detail.
Yeah. I think like exactly. It's not necessarily in the overarching story, but in the details that these things become cool. Though I will say, it does sound like a very Game of Thrones-esque plot in the sense that
with kings and like takeovers and war.
So like obviously there are these demigods that are like the offspring of Queen Marika, who apparently are kind of like the powers that be, and who have the shards of the Elden Ring, the Great Runes, and essentially, we're kind of coming to sort of become an Elden Lord ourselves. So we got to beat these dudes, and apparently there are actually, and this has been confirmed by Miyazaki, there's actually going to be quite a few like NPCs who are also kind of sort of they're probably going to have their own motivations like they often do in From games, but they're also kind of they're similar to us. They are tarnished and kind of on their way back. So, could be interesting. I'm definitely very interested in like the setting, like the way the world looks is really beautiful. And I don't know if you want to read anything else from the site, but there's some interesting information on there, just about like kind of like generally like what the world looks like. Some great screenshots, some great concept art. Pretty cool stuff. But yeah, if we want, we can move on to the gameplay trailer.
Yeah, so
start to talk about that.
Let's talk about it. We want to get into just like point by point.
Yeah, so I guess like in the gameplay trailer, I guess like what particularly stood out to you while watching that?
Like I said before, it was very quick. So, combat-wise, I saw weapon arts.
Mm-hmm.
I saw dodge rolls. There's no HUD. So I'm assuming it's stamina-based combat, just based on how it looks, and all the other games are stamina-based combat. So, yeah, I don't see any magic from the player character. So I'm not sure if that's strictly exclusionary or if this character that they have in the trailer doesn't use magic.
Oh, there's quite a few scenes where magic is used in the trailer by the player character.
Is there?
Yeah, so if you go through it, there's definitely like a scene where the player kind of like turns their sword into like a giant magic sword.
Oh yeah,
there's
I
another
thought that
scene.
was just a weapon art.
There's another scene where it might be. There's another scene where they shoot basically like a super beam, like a hyper beam, which I'm pretty sure was a move very similar to a move from Dark Souls 3. But yeah, what I think is interesting. So like, okay, as you're going through, there's this big scene right at the beginning. So first thing that happens in the trailer is a girl on a horse approaches you and she puts a ring on you. And this person, this lovely young lady, appears to be the new Souls waifu. If I had to make a guess, a new Firekeeper type. Potentially, obviously we don't know what their role will be, but that seems to be like it's the same voice actress as the Firekeeper's past. So it's pretty likely that she'll have some sort of role that's similar to a Firekeeper in some way. But I love that the first thing you see is like you get a whole big view of the lands between, and you see this big ass fucking tree. So what's up with that tree?
I know that they were talking. I remember like when the trailer was first announced, when the game was first announced, there was like rumors about taking from Norse mythology.
Uh-huh.
So I'm guessing that tree is a reference to Yggdrasil from Norse mythology, which is the world tree.
Yeah. So that's definitely, I think, part of it. And like, and they even name dropped the name of the tree in that synopsis that we read. It's called the Erd tree, which basically just means world tree, I think, in like German or something. And so it's definitely got some Yggdrasil vibes, which is something I feel like Miyazaki really likes. Like they did a similar world tree type thing in Dark Souls 1 with the Great Hollow and stuff like that. So I think that's something that they like to include. But I think notably, it actually looks a lot like this. There's like a world spiral tree in Berserk, and obviously Berserk is like a big reference point for Miyazaki and the From team when it comes to like their dark fantasy aesthetic. And it looks a lot like this, basically. It looks quite a bit like it. But what I thought was interesting about this tree, especially as I read more about like what's going on in the game, is that I think this tree actually plays a lot of like mechanical roles in the game, or I would expect it to, because obviously this tree was like at the base of this tree apparently is where the Elden Ring used to be. Like that's where like this tree sprouted from the Elden Ring. Like it's the source. In the synopsis it says the tree is like the source of the or the source of the Erd tree was the Elden Ring, is what's said. And so apparently this tree is going to have a lot of mechanical benefits, and one of them is that there's these things called graces. And essentially these graces, you can actually see a picture of them on the website. It's basically these like little lights. And from what I've been able to gather from like some things that Miyazaki has said, among some other things that have been kind of talked about in interviews, is that these little lights that appear they're like dotted throughout the world. They're called graces. And my understanding is that they're residual light that's kind of been like, that's shone through the tree. So obviously like the sun hits the tree kind of lights up the world sort of almost. And then like there are these like kind of graces and that might be where you can set up camp. That might be like a checkpoint where you can like make a bonfire or something based on what I've read. So
that was another thing. I saw a bonfire in the trailer.
Yeah, so that's also really interesting, right? Because it looks different from your normal bonfire. It's like it looks like kind of like they're making camp like out in the open world. So this hasn't been confirmed or not, but a lot of people think that there might be like, how do you put it? Like you might be able, because in Dark Souls 3 there was a cut mechanic where you could actually make your own bonfire.
Camping simulator.
Yeah, like you could set up your own bonfire, and I think they ended up like that was actually a cut feature from Dark Souls 3. And there's an interesting thing with Elden Ring, and it looks like a lot of things that they actually wanted to do, like a lot of mechanics that they wanted to do in Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 that they didn't get to do due to like time constraints or like just not being able to make it work with the amount of time they had. Because bear in mind, Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne basically came out like one back to back to back. Like it was like literally like 1 year we got Dark Souls 1 DLC, next year we got Dark Souls 2. Then we got Dark Souls 2 DLC, then we got Bloodborne right after that. Okay. And then literally the next year we got Dark Souls 3. So it was like back to back to back games. They clearly didn't, their teams must have been spread super thin, and then they clearly just didn't have time to do everything they wanted to do and had to make concessions. But with Elden Ring, it looks like they're taking a lot of things that they've wanted to do for a long time, and they're kind of, like, at least that seems to be what I'm noticing, and putting them in the game. So I think, and we can talk about this a little bit later, but it looks like that camp you set up might be indicative of maybe when you're in the open world, you can actually like choose, like you can actually place your own bonfires, like maybe where these like if you find a grace in the world, and the grace is, like I said, you can see a picture of these like little lights in the trailer. That's what I would expect. Obviously, that's not like confirmed. That's just kind of like something I'm like, that'd be neat, and it looks like something like that might be the case, but who knows? Anyway, back to the trailer. But the tree is cool. The tree, I think, is like a really good landmark, and I
have nowhere to rest. Then they probably have to put in some mechanic that, like, because the thing is, like, landmark, like, because in Dark Souls, or really in any of their games, the games are semi-open world, but they also follow linear paths.
Yeah, and
those linear paths always eventually lead you to a bonfire, a shrine or something that you can rest at. But if it's completely open world, like you can go anywhere at any time, it's going to be damn near impossible to kind of place like ones that the player character is bound to run into. So it would make sense to allow the player character to kind of place their own.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that would definitely make sense in the open world. I'm sure the dungeons and like the castles will have like preset kind of like pre-placed checkpoints and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that would be a really good idea for the open world. Obviously, it's not 100% confirmed, but that's like based on some of what they've shown, both in the trailer and on their site, that seems like it could be the case. And I think that'd be pretty cool. And then I think the next thing we see in the trailer is we see kind of like so what I like about the tree is that you can, in a lot of these different shots in the trailer, you can see the tree in the background. So a world map has been confirmed for Elden Ring. It's going to be a map where you can kind of like place your own sort of like markers. Like I don't think it's going to have a lot of like checkpoint type of things like on it already, but like as you kind of explore the world, parts of the map will become more visible, and you can kind of place like markers on things that you want to come back to and stuff like that. But at least that seems to be what we're getting from the Miyazaki interviews. But like then like the spokes, like the dungeons and stuff, like there's no map for those. There's just like a map for the open world. But what I think is really cool, and part of what I was thinking about, is like FromSoft never includes like mini maps in their games. Because their worlds are so like tightly designed, like they're designed in such a way that like you're supposed to like learn the way around the areas. So I was thinking like, how are they going to address like a minimal map situation? And now we've been confirmed that a map's in the game, but like how do you keep the immersion of like a FromSoft game like in an open world type game where there's usually like a lot of like pitfalls and gimmicks that a lot of developers like fall into just to make it like playable, right? And like that, having that huge landmark, having that tree as like a huge landmark that like basically It's just like you can see it from almost anywhere. I think it's such a great idea because it's essentially like wherever you are in the world, you just look back, you just like, okay, like I don't remember exactly where I am, but like if you just like find the tree, you'd be like, oh, okay, I know, like if I need to go back somewhere, if I need to like backtrack or retrace my steps, like you can look to the tree and that'll help like orient yourself. So I actually think it's a great idea to have like a huge ass landmark like that. I think it's pretty cool.
I really hope they don't do what they did in Dark Souls 3 and basically force you into fast traveling.
Yeah.
My problem with fast travel in open world games, like less so Dark Souls 1, because Dark Souls 1 you get a lot of the game before you actually get the chance to fast travel, but like Skyrim or Fallout, like Bethesda games and a lot of other titles, they let you fast travel right away.
Yeah.
And my problem with that is you have this huge open world. Make me explore it.
Yeah.
Make me look at it. Because, like, you know, if I gotta get somewhere and, like, you know, and I want to do something, like, I'm gonna fast travel regardless of how I feel. Like, I always start every game like, okay, I'm not gonna fast travel. And then it gets to a point where, like, I need to rush somewhere. And it's like, okay, I'll just fast travel.
Yeah.
But, like, make me look at it. You have this vast open world. Make me explore it. Let me, you know, fall into it. Let me get lost.
Yeah, totally. Like I want it to be such an enticing world that I'll get lost in it. But so many games, it's like after you've been somewhere once, it's like, oh, okay, I can just fast travel now. And yeah, I think a good open world game is a game where you don't want to fast travel. Like I think Ghost of Tsushima does a decent job of like kind of like enticing you to like go through the world on horseback or on foot because there's like a lot of like hidden treasure to be found. So if and I'm really confident based on like what we're seeing in this trailer and what Miyazaki said in interviews that they're going to be like really like fast travel has been confirmed, but they've definitely said that like the open world is seamless. So I think in terms of like they said that there will be a hub, but the hub is going to be connected to the world. It's not going to be like a Hunter's Dream or like Nexus situation where you're in like a pocket dimension or whatever. Like apparently like the hub is like physically connected to the rest of the world. So I'm really excited for that because obviously like Dark Souls 1 being one of my favorite games, I love it because of how the world fits together. Like the world fits together in a weird way, but in like a way that makes sense in my brain because like the hub Firelink Shrine isn't like in a different place. Like it's connected to a lot of different spokes, but it's not like a separate world. It's just like, no, this is just like kind of like your home base. So I like that. It sounds like they're kind of going for a similar thing, and that makes me really excited because I don't like the separate hubs. I like them being connected to the world, in my opinion. But yeah, moving on in the trailer, something I wanted to point out is if you scrub to 36 seconds in, you kind of see this there's this big like rocky mountain in the background, and we see later there's like a dragon fight that happens to be in like kind of like a rocky volcanic area. I think that this rocky area we're seeing in the trailer at 36 seconds in might be where that dragon fight happens. But more importantly about this scene right here is in the foreground. There's basically like a camp, and there's like a flag, and like there's people in the camp like walking around and like it looks like guarding this little outpost that appears to just be part of the open world. So that made me really interested because I'm like, a lot of open worlds have these little like enemy outposts, and I'm just really curious to see like how like it looks like From is going to have stuff like that. They're going to have wandering enemies, they're going to have enemy outposts, and I'm just really curious like how that's going to play into like the overall like gameplay loop and exploration. Not sure if you had any thoughts on that in particular.
One thing that I always wanted to see in FromSoft games, and I'm wondering if they're going to do it here, is friendly settlements. And like they had, they have like friendly sections, like the hub worlds and stuff like that. But like I think it would be really cool, especially like in an open world game. Not a lot, but like maybe one or two settlements where you walk in and there's like an okay amount of people, and like none of them attack you, and you can actually like engage with them. So like, yeah. It'd be interesting to see if this camp that you're seeing in the shot you're talking about is like actually like a friendly camp. And
Yeah.
like, it doesn't have to be super populated, like, with like generic NPC like guard or like, peasant, but like,
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 named characters that you can like, have a chit chat with and like just like rest your head a little bit. And maybe
Yeah.
like a merchant.
Yeah, that'd be neat. Like what I would suspect, because like just looking at this camp, it's like right by like a fucking volcano. I'm gonna go ahead. It looks really tattered and fucked up. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that to me it looks like an enemy camp that you would like sneak around in and like fucking attack, and like I'm using like games like Skyrim and Ghost of Tsushima and like Breath of the Wild as sort of like a reference point for my thoughts on what it looks like. But in a lot of those games, after you take out an enemy settlement, like like friendly NPCs will like then populate it later. So we know for a fact, like Miyazaki confirmed that there won't be like any like big like NPC cities or NPC towns like there are in like Skyrim or like Witcher 3 or whatever. But who knows, maybe like after you take over like a settlement, maybe there will be like an NPC or two who move in. It's hard to say, but it's possible.
Yeah.
We do know like the NPCs are something that Miyazaki's been talking up in a big way, so that very well could be the case. I like this kind of like shattered like temple that they show at 38 seconds in. Looks pretty cool. I like that there's like human and animal like carcasses and bones built into like the walls and stuff like that. This kind of looks like a castle dungeon area. Looks pretty cool. You can see dragons and drakes flying around in the background, so that looks pretty neat. Reminds me of the Dragon Aerie from Dark Souls 2. Looks cool. And then once you get to about 42 seconds in, you see our, a player character, the Tarnished. And one of my favorite things is that...
Assets.
Yeah, wait, assets? What'd you say?
I was saying that, I don't know, like a lot of the stuff looks like it was taken specifically from Dark Souls 3.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a lot of like archways and castles and like walls that look straight out of Dark Souls 3. And I don't know if that's just a consequence of, a fantasy setting or if they're actually reusing some assets.
They might be. A lot of the armor looks pretty similar. Like, I think that's something that did put me off a little bit when I first saw the trailer. I was like, yeah, like clearly they're still using the same engine. Like, comparing it to like the Demon Souls remake, it doesn't look quite as good as that. It looks really good compared to like Dark Souls 3. I do think it looks much better than Dark Souls 3.
If you go to 119, there's an archway. And it looks like the sections in Farron Keep where you'd have the fire. It looks like without the wall that would go in that archway. It looks like the same exact asset as in Farron Keep.
Maybe a little bit. It doesn't look like the same exact asset to me because it's literally like a castle. Where Farron Keep is just like a swamp. But I get what you're saying. Like there are like towers in Farron Keep. Like I will say that this game right off the bat looks like much more like bright than any Dark Souls game. Like Dark Souls has some great biomes, don't get me wrong, but like color wise, like it looks a lot more like, it looks like there's a lot of like autumn colors. It looks a lot like it looks like they took some cues from Sekiro and were like, okay, like let's make this game look a little bit brighter. Yeah, it's still dark in some areas, but I like that it's not like quite as dim as like some of the or like gray as some of their earlier games. But one thing I really like at 45 is that the player character summons a mount by like whistling. And in the interviews or like in the on the website, this is called like your spirit horse, but it clearly looks a lot like I don't know if you've seen Princess Mononoke, that Hayao Miyazaki film by Studio Ghibli. But in that movie, the main character that Miyazaki films have been kind of referenced in Dark Souls games, or like clearly there's elements of those movies that have inspired not just the creators of Souls, but also a lot of people in Japan and worldwide in general. But the horse that you're riding has like these horns. It does big jumps. It clearly looks a lot like, and seems to have taken inspiration from the Yakul, the little like elk thing that the main character Ashitaka rides in Princess Mononoke. It even does big jumps just like that elk. So I think that's a pretty clear reference. But I love that this mount, because mounts in open world games can be like really annoying sometimes, especially if they if you have to like, if they just like walk around and are allowed to wander. And like in Breath of the Wild, mounts fucking suck. Like they really are the worst, because like you'll just like you can capture multiple horses and like tame them, but then you have to keep them at a stable and you have to get them out of the stable whenever you want to use them. And if you like start climbing, you can't just like, you have to like call for them, and if they can't get to where you are and you don't want to go back down and climb back up with the horse, you just lost your horse. So it's like, fuck me, I just lost my fucking horse. So like, I love that FromSoft was like, okay, let's make it a horse that you can summon anywhere, at least anywhere in the open world. I don't know if you can summon it in like dungeons or whatever, but they're like, okay, let's take away any like of the shitty things about horses or like mounted stuff in open world games, and let's make it like the most convenient it can possibly be, and let's just make it a spirit horse that you can summon wherever you want. We'll give it big jumps so you don't have to worry about like platforming being like something that might make you lose your horse. Yeah, right off the bat, like this is so much better. Like I'm already really excited to see what like mounted play feels like mounted traversal, and just mounted combat in general. Like I'm very excited to see what they do with that. I don't know how you feel about it, but how do you feel about it?
Horses to me in games are always like a thing that it's like, okay, well, it's, you know, it's nice to have, but then like I find myself never actually using it. So I like to see how, I guess, they make the horse, because like in a lot of games like the open world games, you get on your horse, you start riding, something comes and attacks you, you get off your horse, you kill it, you get back on your horse, you start riding, something attacks you, and it just goes like that. So I would like to see them kind of make horses, I guess, more useful and more like, it'd be nice if, like, you know, I hope that you don't get interrupted if you get like hit by a horse and like your poise breaks, or sorry, not hit by a horse. If you get hit while you're on a horse and your poise breaks, you don't just fall off the horse and you can keep riding.
Yeah.
As opposed to like you get hit because like you're on a road and some archer dude just shoots you and it's just like, okay, you're off your horse. So it's like, it'd be nice if basically you could just keep riding regardless of like what's attacking you.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's my thing on horses.
Yeah, I would like to see that as well. Like, I'm actually especially like combat, like mounted combat in open world games, at least in my experience, almost always sucks. Like Ghost of Tsushima is a pretty good open world game, and like riding your horse definitely like makes like running around the world way easier. So like whenever I'm going somewhere, I'll hop on my horse. And one thing that game does really well is like, even if like you left your horse like way back somewhere, if you just whistle, it'll like run up to you. Like, so it's like more convenient than like a Breath of the Wild horse, or even I would say like a Witcher 3 horse, which can get annoying. But like mounted combat typically sucks. So like I'm really hoping that like it's like there's a whole scene in this trailer, I think later on around like 149. I think is the frame, maybe 150. Yeah, 150, I think it was. There's like you're fighting like a dragon and you're on your horse.
Yeah, and you're on a horse. Yeah, I see that.
So like what I really hope, and like I'm hopeful for this. This is kind of like a hope, not like an expectation. But like I really hope, because FromSoft is the best at like taking things that normally suck in video games and making it actually fun. Like honestly, like I hadn't played a game where I liked the combat until I played a FromSoft game, and I'm like, oh, this is actually fun. Like, not like a third-person action, like RPG anyway. Like, I'd played, like, action games and, stuff like that where the combat was fun, or, like, multiplayer games where the combat was fun. But, like, I'd never played an RPG where I was like, oh, this is, like, fun to fight things. And, like, until FromSoft was like, yeah, let's actually make it fun. So, like, and they do that a lot. Like, they'll make, like, like I think the stealth in Sekiro is pretty fun. I think like the traversal in Sekiro is pretty fun, when a lot of times that can be like kind of tedious in other games. Not in all games, but in some games. So like what I'm really hoping, because they focused on it so much in this trailer, I really hope they've like kind of like reinvented the wheel a little bit on it, because that's what From does really well. They take things that normally suck in most games and make them like really cool. So like I'm hoping by the fact that they're showing off the mounted stuff so much that they actually made it like really cool. And I'm confident that they did, because the horse can double fucking jump. I don't know if you saw that.
It can double jump, you said?
Yeah. So at 152, there's a scene where the dragon's like about to strike you with lightning. The horse does a double jump, which is fucking sick. So the horse can basically like, so I'm actually really excited, because a lot of times like for big jumps in these games, like you have to get off your horse. Like, Shadow of the Colossus is a great example of like kind of, like you do a lot of horseback riding because you have to like travel long distances to fight colossi and whatnot. And but if you jump from too high up on that horse, like first of all, the horse usually won't do it. But like if you do somehow do it, you might end up hurting your horse. Like, so it's like same thing with Ghost of Tsushima. You can really fuck your horse up in that game pretty badly. So, and obviously in Breath of the Wild, you can just straight up like jump your horse off a cliff and that horse is just gonna die. Like, that's just it for that horse. So like I like that they made this more of like a horse, elk, deer type of thing that can like jump super high. And there's another great scene earlier in the trailer, I think around where was it? It was at 133 or 132 into 134.
Where it does the magic jump thing up the cliff.
Yeah, so that makes me really excited, because that sounds like, oh, the horse isn't going to be a detriment to you in traversing the world. It's actually going to, like, you're not going to have to like get off your horse to like climb something. The horse will actually help you get places. Like, that's great. Like, that's what you want. That's what you want like horseback stuff to be, as opposed to like, oh, I need to get off of my horse to like climb this mountain. It's like, no. Like, do it on the horse. And it seems like they're kind of going for something like that. Or at least there's like this scene is really interesting, because there appears to be like some sort of like winds like signal, kind of like showing like almost like a launch pad, which is very video gamey for a From game, but I think it's cool. And then the horse does like a huge fucking leap and like runs up the side of the mountain, which is fucking sick. So that makes me excited. It makes me think that like the fact that they show it off so much in this trailer, it makes me think this clearly wasn't an afterthought for them, and that they actually like put a lot of work into making like the horse stuff like fun and cool and like helpful, as opposed to a hindrance. At least that's what I hope. That seems to be what they like. That's what I'm hoping that all of this footage of the horse doing stuff is implying, I suppose. But anyway, after that point with the horse, there's an interesting moment where you actually jump off your horse and attack a group of enemies. This is at, I think, 135. Like, if you like 134.
Oh yeah, I saw that. He like does like a jump attack.
Yeah, but you actually jump off the back of the horse. The horse disappears as you jump off of it. And you do a big jump attack with a big sword. That's pretty cool. Which is cool, yeah. So obviously, if you have a horse in a game, you have to have like a mounted to unmounted leap attack. So that's, I'm glad that they included that. That's pretty neat. And yeah, there's a lot of interesting things with like the mounted stuff. Like if you go back to like 157, I think, where you see. So this is an interesting scene, because you see like these guys pulling this cart, right? Oh, sorry, 157. I meant 57. My apologies.
Oh.
Sorry about that. Yeah, at 57.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Real quick, before 57, at 55, do you see that giant creature with a ball sack?
Yes, I love that thing.
Yeah, I want to know more about that.
Yeah, I wonder if that thing's just like, is that thing just like wandering the world? Like, what is that thing?
Cool.
That would be awesome. Like that makes me really excited. It reminds me of a Shadow of the Colossus type of thing, like big ass guy with a bell for a ball. Uh, but you know what's interesting is at 155 you can actually see like a building on top of that rock monster thing.
Oh yeah, you can.
So it makes me think that like maybe if you wring the guy's nuts, you'll be able to you'll be able to he'll like be like ow, and he'll like bend down, and then you can get on top and go to the building or whatever. But that's just
I'm definitely gonna try
guess.
shooting an arrow at the ball sack from a distance to see what happens.
Yeah. No, I just think that's cool because it made me wonder. I'm like, oh, how do you get up there? Because obviously there's got to be a way to get up there if there's a building on top. But yeah, that's a pretty interesting shot right there. There's a couple really weird looking enemies in this trailer. I like Potboy. I want to say that's
Potboy is interesting.
Potboy is fucking so cool. I want Potboy to be my friend. Honestly. Really badly. So one thing I want to talk about is with these roaming enemies, like these, at 157, there's the two giants.
Those are the carts, yeah.
Pulling this like big thing, and there's basically like a whole crew around them, you know, like almost like a group of like roaming enemies. So there's another picture of these guys on the website. Like I don't know if it's the same group or if there's like a bunch of these guys like roaming the world, but like, you know, every open world game has like roaming enemies, and I like how distinct these guys look. Like I like how weird they look. And what I think is cool is if you like clearly in this part of the trailer you're riding a horse and a mounted guy comes up to you and does an attack, and you kind of joust with that person. And I think what's cool about that is while you're running towards him, you do kind of like a sweeping attack. You use both hands and do like a big like uppercut slice. So I wonder if there's like mounted combat arts. I wonder if that could be a thing. That'd be pretty neat. Like maybe if like you really like using the horse, you can like spec into like horse moves and do like, because like this game's yeah, that'd be pretty neat. I don't know. That's something that a lot of people are speculating about right now, about like, because there's something we'll get into later. There's apparently a lot of different combat arts that you can learn that are like actually like collectibles. Like you can find them throughout the world, and yeah, I just think it's interesting. Like I just think that's something that I noticed that I'm like, yeah, that looks cool. I want to see. Like I wonder if like, you know, horse is a build. Like, you know, like I'm going for a full horse build.
Horse is the meta.
Yeah.
Horse is the meta. Horse actually beats everything.
Oh yeah. Horse beats rock, paper, and scissors.
So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but there is PvP in the game. I wonder how that's going to play in with the horse.
Well, it's actually been confirmed in an interview by Miyazaki that you won't be able to use the horse while doing PvP.
Ah, dang it.
Yeah, too bad. I don't know how they're going to restrict you from using the horse while PvP is happening, but that's basically Miyazaki said, like, yeah, you won't be able to use mounted stuff while someone's invading you.
That it's probably an item, like, similar to how you use an Estus or a Summon Stone.
Yeah.
And, like, in Dark Souls, they just, like, they gray out like, a homeward bone when you're getting invaded, so like they would probably just gray out the item.
Yeah.
Be like, no, you can't use it.
Yeah. But one thing that makes me excited about seeing these roaming enemies in the world is that there's this picture on the website where you can basically see like this kind of like a similar group of enemies. It might not be the same group, but they look very similar, like kind of walking through a different area. So like roaming enemies just in the world, and you might run into them and you can like either choose to fight them or avoid them. And like one thing that's cool is instead of you riding up on your horse and attacking them that way, in this scene the character, and it might be just a different build, but this character is using like stealth. They're in the bushes, and the website actually says like you can, you know, rush in guns blazing, you can like invite, like, you know, you can summon like helpers to, you know, attack your obstacles, or you can use stealth to, you know, pick enemies off one by one, Sekiro style. So yeah, this particular image makes me really excited just for the different, like the variety of play styles and like how many options they're giving you for approaching situations. So that's something that in Sekiro I feel like there wasn't quite as much of, where here there just seems like so many options for approach, and I really like to see it.
Yeah, I love when the game gives you options and you can do different, like, various things.
Yeah.
It's every unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite excited for that. Moving on in the trailer a little bit, there's this great scene of, so like the tarnished guy is wandering through this area, and you can see this room full of limbs, which might be related to a boss we see later in the trailer. You then see the tarnished climbing a ladder, and in the background, this is at 104. There's a giant fucking face on the ground. I don't know if you noticed that.
I saw that, yeah.
And what's interesting about that is that it looks like a giant squid. Like it's like a dried squid, because you can see like tentacles kind of coming off the end of it. Disgusting. Gross. But cool. It looks really weird, and I like that. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on it.
It's a weird. I mean, like, it's classic FromSoft, right? Like, you take something semi-human and you fucking make it weird. You throw like arms on, like extra arms on it, and like make it really long, or tentacles, or this and that. So it's basically exactly what I expect.
Yeah, totally. There's a lot of scenes in this trailer of like a character walking through with a torch, which I hope is like, I hope the torch is like, because I know in Dark Souls 2 they really wanted to do more with the torches, so but like unfortunately they had to like they didn't have time to implement the lighting system in the way that they wanted. So I would really love to see, like, Dark Souls 2 had a lot of really great ideas that weren't executed super well due to time constraints, and I would love to see them kind of do a similar thing here and just like kind of, actually make areas where you have to choose between a light source or your shield. I think that's an interesting decision to make. There's a lot of enemies throughout this that have like either multiple limbs or they just are limbs. Like, I don't know if you saw later on in the trailer. I want to say it like, where was it?
The dude was he looks like almost the dudes at the bottom of Irithyll Valley in Dark Souls 3. The ones that are like in that sewer area. I think another guy you're talking about.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
He's got like a face and a crown, but then like 6 arms, and he's like really long.
Yeah, he's like a big worm man, or like a centipede man with arms.
Right at 108 or 109. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but later on in the trailer at like 2:35, there's like it looks like a spider, but it's actually just a hand with like a million fingers.
Yes, I saw that. The thing looks weird, and like the thing right after that, the flaming face.
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
Pause it. He's got like 2 flame shooters on either side.
Yeah,
that's weird looking.
And it's on a wagon. The face is on a wagon. I love it, dude. It's so weird. I'm all for it. Like, like, honestly, the trailer gets like weirder as it goes on, and like this is like the peak weirdness. Like, then there's that like weird hand that grabs like a player character at one point. Like, I think that's at like 2:38. There's like this giant weird hand with like fingers that are like glowing that grabs you. That kind of reminds me of like the beginning of like a game, like, getting grabbed by like the bird in the undead place that you start Dark Souls 1 at. But like, yeah, there's like a lot of weird stuff with limbs going on, which is interesting. Like, I wonder how that's going to play into it. We already talked a little bit about the bonfire, but at 1:39 you can see like a wolf man, clearly some Artorias vibes.
Yeah, the one howling, yeah.
Yeah, it gives me like Guts from Berserk or like Artorias kind of vibes going on there, which is always a neat thing to pull from. At 1:41, the player character uses a cube, which appears to be like the new way to summon folks. Now, what's interesting about summoning, and we'll talk more about that a little later, is that these actually might not be like other players, because not only are there like sort of like NPC summons, but there's also like apparently you can summon enemies that you've like defeated or like captured in some way. Like that's what Miyazaki was saying in interviews, that like not only can you summon other players or like NPCs to assist you, but you can also summon different like enemies you've defeated or whatever. So like here I'll share a great picture with you from the website, but essentially there's a picture on the website of you using the same cube you use when you summon those like characters in the trailer, and in this scene the player character is summoning like a bird spirit to like come and fight for them. So pretty interesting. I just think that's a neat. I'm really excited. It's like I was jokingly saying this is like Pokemon Souls. Like you capture these monsters and have them like kind of fight with you. I think it's pretty cool. I don't know. I don't know if you've heard of that mechanic yet, but definitely different from what they normally do. But yeah, so that's quite a lot of the trailer. The dragon catches lightning. That's pretty fucking sick.
That is pretty fucking sick. Yeah, I'm curious to see how like all the hidden lore and like where George R. R. Martin's influence is going to be in that, because I'm not too familiar with his work. I don't know if he's kind of the background sort of like hidden lore, or if he's more of like an upfront. I feel like he's probably going to end up being, he's more of like an upfront kind of lore. So I wonder how that's going to play with like the hidden lore of Souls game or FromSoft games.
So it's actually been confirmed in a couple of interviews now, including one with George R. R. Martin, that he wrote the like the lore and like the mythos for the world. Like, so he basically like wrote like the backgrounds of like who the main character, like who the big players are in the world, like, you know, how the world became the way it is now. And FromSoft basically took things from there and like made like the game out of that. So like the first thing that was done was the mythos and stuff by George R. R. Martin, and then they kind of crafted like the current story and where that goes from George R. R. Martin's like kind of mythos that he wrote up for them. Which, if I don't know, but from what I've heard about George R. R. Martin's books, is that he writes very similarly to like the way FromSoft does in some ways, in the sense that there's a lot of like little things that like he'll mention offhandedly that kind of build like the world, like build the lore of his worlds in a big way. So I think maybe that contributed to how they wanted to work with him or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting. There's a scene at in the trailer at 155 where you're fighting like a big dog man or something who's like shooting beams at you, and you do like a dodge step similar to Bloodborne, which is kind of neat.
Where's that?
That's at 155, or like 154, 155, around there. You do like a dodge step out of the way of an attack, and then if you go to
you like dodge steps forward.
Yeah, and if you go to 156, you can actually see the character jumping over like a sweep attack. Similar to like Sekiro style. So that's cool. And it's actually been confirmed that there's a dedicated jump button, just like Sekiro. So I'm actually really excited about that. Like, I was worried that they'd go back to like having you stuck to the ground like they did in Dark Souls.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that they gave it a dedicated jump button. Apparently, we'll see how much that impacts like exploration and stuff. I just know that it can be used in combat pretty much.
The jump actually looks very, very like freeform. Like in Dark Souls, it's very much like you're not jumping up, you're jumping forward. But
yeah,
this looks like he's jumping up.
Yeah, this looks like he did a big leap. You know, this guy's got hang time. But yeah,
dunk.
This guy can definitely dunk. But yeah, it's that's I think just about everything in the trailer I noted. There are some other cool like scenes later on. There's like a Cyclops. There's a scene where you see the character using stealth in this like castle, which is cool. And there's a guy with like a Burger King man head at at 226. There's Burger King Headman. You're using like a weapon art on him. At 227, you can see the guy charging up like a beam of magic, which is cool to fire at a giant. So yeah, definitely a lot of magic. Definitely a lot of, different cool attacks. At what was it, 218, you can see a character with like a giant fucking like strength weapon style hammer, which is cool. I think there was one other thing that I thought was really sick along those lines. Like there's at 230 you can see that there's this cool like spirit deer fight, and the character has like claws, like the player character. So it looks like there's a lot of build variety essentially, which I'm very excited for. Also, one thing I think is cool to point out, at 233, looks like some sort of like queen, maybe like a lady.
That might be the queen that's mentioned in the story. What's her name?
Queen Marika.
Marika, yeah.
That's what
she's got like a guard standing there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like there's like she because like it's notable that they stop on this lady, and I wonder if that is Queen Marika. So yeah, I guess we'll find out. And I like that there's like a big picture of the king behind her, and like I wonder what that guy's all about, because he's probably a big figure, but who knows.
If you look right after that, there's like this dude who's like mulling over like some books in a library, and I'm like wondering what that's about.
Me too, man. I saw that and I was like, I wonder if like you can actually like, because in Bloodborne you can like read notes people like leave on the ground, and I was like, you know what? I wonder if like in this game, if you get to like a library or if you find like a book or like a piece of text, if you could just read it. That'd be kind of cool. I would love to see that, like, honestly. Like, I know a lot of people wouldn't engage with that, but, like, personally, as, like, a lore fiend, like, I'd be fucking all over that shit. So, yeah, that made me excited. I don't know if that's what that is, but who knows? Maybe that's how you, like, learned, like, weapon arts, is you read texts on how to do them or something. Who knows? You fight a big guy with a lot of arms. That's pretty cool. You do a big jump attack. Very cool. Yeah, the trailer looks cool. I'm excited to see more. Like, I'm excited to see like actual gameplay, like in like a more like longer form. But yeah, did you have anything else in particular to say about the trailer?
No, I know that there are a couple of places to go, a couple of like specific places to go. Yeah, I think you said 6.
Yeah, so you can definitely see some places in the background in the trailer, and in like the pictures on the website and stuff, like some like the castles, and you can. I like how vertical the game looks. Like it looked like one thing I've always loved about these games is that like you'll have like a fucking castle on top of like a mountain, like Lothar Castle is just like so much higher than everything else, and yeah, I like the idea of being able to like. I like that there are like visible landmarks and it's not just like a flat plain, I feel like a lot of open worlds fall into like kind of like a more samey environment type of thing, and it looks like they're going for something more like mythical in scale, which I think is neat.
Like what I mean is like, so in Dark Souls 1 you had 4 Lord Souls to get. In Dark Souls 3 you had 4 ashes to get, and in this it looks like there are 6 kingdoms to conquer, maybe.
Yeah, so that's what's been said by Miyazaki. There's like apparently like six kingdoms, and that's where like those are like the realms of the demigods, like the children of Queen Marika who inherited the power of the Elden Ring or whatever. But beyond, so like there's 6 different kingdoms you can go to, but there's also like apparently a lot of different like there's other places, there's like dungeons, other like castles and churches, like other like catacombs, like forested areas, like there's like a bunch of places in between apparently as well. That's what's been said. But yeah, I think that with that in mind, since we've gone through the trailer, I think might be good to like just sort of touch on some of the features and like gameplay elements that have more or less been confirmed by Miyazaki at this point. So you already talked about like the vast open world with the legacy dungeons and spokes. Obviously, horseback riding, mounted combat. We've already talked about stealth obviously been confirmed. I'm hoping it works. I feel like Sekiro's stealth system was pretty good, so I'm glad to see that come back. I'm glad to see the dedicated jump button make a return. According to Miyazaki, that'll be back as well. So I don't know if you'll be able to jump quite as high as Sekiro could, or if it'll be quite as fast or quite as effective, but I'm just glad that they've brought it in to like a more Dark Souls style game. It'll definitely add a lot of like variety to combat.
That'll be nice.
Like you mentioned, the stamina bar is back. But according to Miyazaki, it'll actually be like less restrictive than in the past game. So unlike maybe like Dark Souls 1, where like stamina, if you run out of stamina, you're kind of screwed. Like you got to really manage that really well. Like apparently it's going to be a little bit more like Bloodborne, I think, where like your stamina recovers very quickly, even if the bar is there. We already talked about it, but PvP is back. Covenants are also back.
Covenants are cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to see.
I hope they flesh them out more, just because like I felt like Covenants were never like, there was something you joined maybe for I felt like it was usually for a some sort of PvE advantage, like you wanted a merchant or there was a spell they had that you wanted. Like I feel like there never really was a good like I never really felt a good PvP experience when it came to Covenants. Like it'd be cool if like, Covenant, like you had Covenants that were at war, and like it was more like once you join that Covenant, like you're dedicating yourself to being at war with the other Covenant.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, like you could be like invaded by someone of that Covenant at any time, and like you can invade someone of that Covenant at any time.
Yeah. No, I completely agree, dude. Like that's like one of my hopes, right? So like that hasn't been like confirmed, but based on some of the other stuff from Miyazaki, like, so one thing that Miyazaki said in an interview is that like someone asked him like, how long does it take you to finish the game? And he said basically, well, without doing like any of the optional stuff, it takes like about 30 hours. So to me,
speedrunners are going to tear that apart.
Oh, I'm sure they'll do it in like an hour, maybe less, who knows? But what made me excited by him saying that, because obviously this game has like way more content than like any game they've done in the past, like 20 years basically, or at least since they've done like at least a Kingsfield game. Probably has more than that though as well. This is probably based on what they've said, this is basically their biggest game to date from FromSoft, like in terms of just sheer amount of shit to do and like amount of content in one game. So like the fact that there's that much content, but it's only a 30-hour game, like if you just do what's required, makes me think that like maybe you won't even have to kill all of the like the leaders of all 6 kingdoms. Like maybe, like I think what would be really cool is if like you have to choose which ones you're going to take down, and you can choose which ones you take down. Like maybe you need to only get like 3 shards of the Elden Ring from those 3 kingdoms in order to be able to like challenge the end boss or like get to the final part of the game and beat the game. I think that'd be really cool, because that way like maybe like you're like, oh, from what I've heard about this, the boss of this area, or what I've heard about like the king of this area, or the queen of that area, I actually don't know. Like I like that character. I don't want to kill that character. Maybe there's a advantage to killing that character in the sense that you get a cool boss fight and you get like maybe some like a new ability or something, or like a new weapon art, or like there's like a mechanical advantage to doing it. But like I like the idea of the game being like you can choose, like maybe there'll be covenants for each area, and you can join, and by joining that covenant, maybe there will actually be like this is what I want to see. Obviously none of this is confirmed, but what I would like I agree with you in that like I love the idea of having them actually flesh out covenants and giving you actual like real consequences for abandoning the covenant, and or like or like killing the boss that's associated with that covenant, because I feel like that doesn't happen enough in those games.
I love in Dark Souls 1 how it's like, okay, I'm part of the Way of White. Oh, but now I'm part of the Dark Wraiths. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What? No, like,
yeah.
do that? Like, no, like I hate how games like have grown to a point where they let you do anything and everything. So I would like some restrictiveness, as opposed, like, for the sake of story and immersion. Like, if I join a covenant, don't just let me join the enemy covenant.
Yeah, make at least have there be like a gameplay consequence, even if it's just like, oh, now these characters are going to attack you wherever they see you. Like, I think that'd be, and since it's an open world, like I feel like the covenant system, if they really wanted to, they could really flesh it out. Like, imagine if like you run into, because like different people in the open world have different flags, and I assume those different flags, like the people who are wandering the world, and that we stopped on that one scene where like there's like an encampment. And that there was like a flag at the encampment. So it makes me think like it'd be really cool if these different encampments, maybe like, let's say you join this particular covenant, now those characters don't like attack you anymore until you like abandon the covenant or like kill someone associated with it or break it in some way. Like I think that would be really cool. Like not only having like a PvP element to it, but also having like actual like in-game consequences for the choices you make. I would like, they've done that a little bit in like, I think Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls. The Dark Souls series does like have some good covenants. Not all of them are great. Most of them are kind of meh, and like a few of them are good. But like I think it would be really cool to have like to go even deeper with it. And like that's one of my like hopes for like that's something I really hope to see. It hasn't been confirmed how deep they're going to go with that though. But yeah, who knows? I would like to see that. Moving on a little bit. We already talked about being able to summon defeated enemies and spirit companions in battle. I'm going to summon Pot Boy. I want a little
Pot Boy,
little pot friends. Going to be smoking my pot with Pot Boy all the way to the bank. And then, so one thing that's been confirmed is that there will be RPG. There'll be like an RPG leveling system, like similar to like Dark Souls. But there's also going to be, and we've already talked about this a little bit, like skills and weapon arts. And magic abilities that you can collect as you explore the world. And one thing that Miyazaki confirmed is that you can actually, like the weapon arts won't be tied to a particular weapon. So you can actually like, that weapon art that we saw them use in that one scene in the trailer where he did like a spin flip attack, you might be able to like attach that to like a different weapon. And like it just, I think that's great because it gives you so much like build variety. So maybe it's a little bit more like Sekiro with like a combination of like the skills from Dark Souls 3, but like with a Sekiro kind of like weapon art, like a combat art sort of, system in some way.
I agree. I like having RPG leveling. It's just, for me, I like it. So when they got rid of it in Sekiro, I was, But I like having it here because it lets you kind of build how you want, but then also allows you, you can get the new skills and weapon arts, like finding them in the world. Like that's nice too.
Yeah, I definitely think it incentivizes exploration. Like, I think all of these elements definitely incentivize exploration because apparently they can be found throughout the open world. So less, incentivizes less fast traveling. I think that's good. But yeah, I also just think it's cool because like a lot of people are saying like, oh, you'll be able to use any weapon art with any weapon. And I'm like, I don't think that's what Miyazaki meant. Like, I think what he actually meant was that like, if you find like a weapon art that works with like a specific weapon type, then you can assign it to any weapon of that type. Like, I don't think you'll be able to like assign like a flip attack to like a fucking, like great club, like I think that would like break the game, right? Like, so I think but still it's still a lot of customizability and it allows you to kind of like have more player expression. So I think that's really cool. I'm excited to see that. So we already talked a little bit about it, but they're going back to kind of doing, and they didn't like completely remove this in Sekiro, but they did it much less. Like they're going back to like having a lot of the lore being like kind of like hidden, where you have to kind of like, read item descriptions, talk to NPCs, kind of look at the geography and like the architecture to kind of figure out like, oh, what happened here. But the Miyazaki said that because obviously like they've learned a lot from the way they told the story in Sekiro, they want to, even if a lot of the lore is hidden, they want to kind of bring like kind of like the bulk, like the main part of the story, like the main storyline to like the forefront. So there probably is still going to be a lot of like cutscenes and a lot of like more like clear like storytelling devices used. So I'm okay with that. I like the idea of there being a blend, and like it gives you the option, like that way, like a lot of people who play Dark Souls, like they'll play it and they'll be like, I don't understand what the fuck I'm doing. I don't know what's going on. I like that they're kind of trying to like, spell out like at least the main plot to the average player, and have like, you know, us lore divers who want to do that kind of giving us the option to like delve deeper. I think that's good. But yeah, I guess now that we're kind of coming to an end here, were there any particular elements in the trailer or in the interviews, or just like in the pictures or on the website that like really stood out to you? Or is like what are you most excited for based on like what's been shown?
I guess what I'm most excited for personally is just to have a new Dark Souls style game, because like Dark Souls 1, I was spoiled on a bit of it before I actually went and finished it, and then Dark Souls 3 I kind of rushed through and I didn't really take the chance to explore.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned from my mistakes from the last two Soul style games. So I'm excited for this one. I'm gonna go in and just I'm not gonna look at anything up. I'm gonna try to be very thorough.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm just excited for that in general.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I guess for me, like I'm really excited for like I'm really excited to see how things shape up with like the new elements, because like obviously I'm excited for another FromSoft game. Sekiro is great, but it didn't like fully scratch the itch for me. And like it has been over 5 years since Dark Souls 3 came out, so it really has been a long time since FromSoft's made like a big, like, you know, epic like a Western fantasy RPG style game, and I'm really excited just in general to see what I'm always excited to see like what things they do that like breaks the formula a little bit. So like for me, like I like that it looks like Dark Souls, like that's very familiar, but like I'm honestly like the stuff that I'm paying most attention to is the stuff that's different. So like I like that there's going to be like spirit summons. I think that's really cool. Like being able to summon like a you know, something that was an enemy to aid you in combat, I think is really cool. I'm glad they're including stealth and like a jump button. Like I'm really glad that they're taking like a lot of they seem to be taking a lot of like their best ideas and like a lot of like new ideas and like adding that in as like different ways to approach combat situations and just situations in general. So I guess if I had to sum up what I'm most excited for, it would just be to see what they bring to the table that's new. And like, I'm just excited that after Sekiro, which kind of, I feel like sort of forced players to play a certain way, like this game feels like it's going to have so many different options for how you approach combat situations. I just think it's going to be really, really cool. And it's like right up my alley as far as what I look for from these developers. And I guess last but not least, as far as like things that haven't been confirmed about Elden Ring, or things that like, you know, like is there anything that we haven't seen that you like want to see from the game? I know you mentioned Covenants, but is there anything else?
Yeah, Covenants would be nice. I mean, that's really it. I think for me, it's a little too early to say, like, you know, because there's not a lot of information out there.
Mm-hmm.
Covenants are a big one. I want more information on those, and I want to see what kind of PvE elements are going to be impacted by it, and what kind of PvP elements are going to be impacted by it, if any, or if they're kind of just going to be a tacked on thing, like they kind of were in Dark Souls 3 and 1.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, like, I would love to see, like, just things I hope to see, I guess, is that, like, I hope to see that the mounted combat is actually, you know, fun, because, like we talked about, not always the best part of most open world games. I hope to see, honestly, I hope they include swimming, because obviously they did swim, like, underwater combat a little bit in Sekiro, and they did, like, allowed you to swim. And I feel like in Sekiro it was cool, but it just wasn't used very much. Like they had a couple cool like set pieces and a couple fights with Headless, who are already not super fun to fight. So I would love to see like an underwater level or an underwater boss. I think that would be really cool. Who knows if we'll see it? Hasn't been, you know, obviously that's not something that's been confirmed or anything. That's just a hope. I think that'd be neat. Yeah. I think beyond that, I think I'd like to see maybe a little bit of, and who knows if we'll get this or not, but like I think it would be cool. Like if there's a jump button, I think it would be cool to have like maybe like doesn't need to be like a robust climbing mechanic, but some sort of climbing mechanic where you can like maybe like hop over, like grab the end of a ledge and pull yourself up, or hang from a ledge. Like if there's gonna be stealth, I'd like it to have like at least a little bit of like traversal. Like I don't expect it to be like as robust as Sekiro's, because obviously that's what that game was about. But I think it'd be cool, like if you could, you know, grab a ledge or kind of like hide around the corner in like a castle. I think adding those elements would, you know, add a lot of variety to play, and I'd be really excited to see something like that.
I agree.
Cool. Any other wrap-up thoughts?
Let's hope it's not delayed.
Dude, oh my god. I mean, luckily there are so many good, like, Souls-like type of stuff coming out pretty soon, like Dark Souls Nightfall by
Nightfall.
Nightfall by Grimrock looks really cool.
It does look really cool.
That's apparently coming out in December. And then there's another game called Bleak Faith Forsaken. That's kind of like an indie game by like a really small team, but it looks so fucking sick. It looks like a Souls-like mixed with like Shadow of the Colossus meets like, I don't know. It looks like something out of like Dune, like I don't know if you're familiar with like the Dune series at all, but it's kind of like a sci-fi fantasy. It's really sick. It has like it looks like it plays very Souls-like, but it's got like a very different setting and you know, a lot of like climbing that you can do. So I see that and I'm like, shit, man, that looks fucking great. So there's like definitely a lot of stuff for a Souls player to look forward to right now, but Elden Ring is obviously way up there, and yeah, I certainly hope it doesn't get delayed either.
All right, well,
that's all for this.
Chip, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, man. Well, that's all for this podcast, and we'll see y'all later.